Narayan, Romano, and we got a lot of really interesting things to talk about today. Namely, wanted to have him on to talk about this book that recently came out, again, Material Success Through Yoga Principles. So, Narayan, welcome, man. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Jonica. Thank you for having me. I think, as I was saying, this is my first podcast, so I'm a little nervous.
You'll be fine. How are you doing, man? What's new?
I'm doing very well. I was just actually reading this book this morning, so it's fun that you want to talk about it. We're doing a lot through Crystal Clarity. Maybe people know, people probably don't know, but Crystal Clarity is the publishing arm of Ananda Sangha worldwide. So my wife and I lead Crystal Clarity, and that involves everything from publishing to promoting, sharing books by Paramhansa Yogananda, his disciple Swami Kriyananda, and this one in particular is sort of a blend, of those two, of Swami's sort of distillation of Yogananda's teachings on not just spiritual success, but how do you manifest that in your daily life.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the first things I just wanted to maybe was dive right into the book was the title itself, Material Success Through Yoga Principles. I think in many people's minds, that's kind of like a weird juxtaposition. So it's like, is there a contradiction between those two things?
Yeah. I think one time Swami met someone, I think he actually shares this story in the book. He met a successful businessman, I think it was in Canada, and the man said, when I come home from work, this is when my spiritual life begins, when I meditate here in my meditation room. And Swami didn't say it to him, but he thought, it's a pity that this man doesn't feel like he can spiritualize his daily life and his business life. And that's the real driving force of the course is there is no difference. It's just our life is one. There's not I think we like to compartmentalize and sort of say our meditation, our spiritual life is over here, and our making money life is over here, but they're one and the same. And that's one of the unique parts of the course is how to manifest that inner life in whatever creative way and situation God has placed you.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I mean, I had this picture isn't always here, but this is a picture of Yogananda with one of his most advanced, you could say, spiritual children, Rajarsi Janakananda, who was a multimillionaire. In today's standards, would be a billionaire. And he was his most advanced student, just to kind of put this book into context. And even people don't think about this, but Yogananda was also incredibly materially successful for a monk, for a Swami, who didn't personally own anything, but found organizations and built churches and
Rajarsi was a self-made millionaire, like you said, and he was the chairman of many boards. He had oil companies, he had insurance, other companies that he was a part of, and he would start his day he would block his calendar, and he would have a long, like a 3-hour meditation or something in his office in the morning, and he would get deeply concentrated, and he would tell his secretary not to accept any appointments. And people would ask him, how can you afford to have block that time out?
Right.
And he said, I can't afford not to. He said, because when I'm called on to make a decision, I have that calm concentration, and I can get to the heart of the matter and make a decision within a moment that might take me, weeks otherwise.
Yeah, you think people think that you need to be, stress out and go over every single intimate detail of a thing and really just kind of obsess over something. But he took a whole nother approach.
Yeah, that's one of the keys in originally this wasn't a book, it was a course that Swami Kriyananda started in India. But one of the keys to success that he talks about is concentrated energy. And we live, of course, in world that is just so fragmented, you know, and people's attention spans, I think, now are potentially less than a goldfish. I think there's literally like a study that a goldfish can hold itself longer. I mean, it's a joke, but it's serious in some respects. We have the Instagram, we've got, you know, Reels, and, you know, everything is like, you know, instant gratification. And there is something that we lose when we don't have that ability to concentrate. And like you were sharing, Swami Kriyananda's life was an inspiration. It was an invitation through inspiration. So he wrote 150 books. He composed 400 pieces of music. Right. He helped found the spiritual communities, Ananda Sangha worldwide, 9 communities. He was prolifically creative, but he adhered to his concentration on a simple principle of the bottom line, not being material success, but the bottom line was, for Swami, was inner peace.
Right.
And if he felt that something compromised that, he wouldn't move from that principle. And that's really, that's what I find so inspiring about his life and the people that I know at Ananda, is that they're having fun. It's a joyful, that's what Ananda means, right? It means divine joy. And there is divine joy within us, within everything. And if we can take that time to cultivate it, to unearth it, then we can bring it. We can share it in whatever we're doing.
Yeah. It's interesting because you mentioned the kind of the conception of this book. And I think that's one of the things that you learn after you've cultivated that peace over a period of time. And you don't need to have the weeks and months of seclusion to do something, that you can draw on the inspiration in the moment. Do you know the story of when Swami first had the inspiration to write the story? Could you tell that?
Yeah, it was a fun story. That his catalyst and inspiration to write this course was, he was in India in the hospital, and he had double pneumonia, I believe, at that time. He was very sick in a hospital bed. It could have been that time where Swami Devi tells the story where Swami had kidney failure in India. It may have been the same time, and he had tubes coming out of them, and they called, and Miriam, his nurse, was there, and she said, well, would you like to talk with Swami? And they said, yes, of course. And Swami said, well, they tell me I look like a plate of pasta, because he had, you know, all these tubes. He was on dialysis and whatnot. But that's a side story. But around that same time, and Swami was very ill, this Indian doctor came up to him in the hospital and said, sir, can you help me? And Swami's like, well, I'll try. You know, I mean, here he is laid out in the hospital, and this doctor's coming to him. And he said, sir, I know you're a holy man. I have 2 sons. I'm a doctor. How can I be successful without cutting some corners in life? And Swami said, it is only by strict adherence to Dharma, meaning right action, meaning following higher principles. It is only through strict adherence to Dharma that one can be successful in the long term. And Swami realized from this interaction with this Indian doctor that he needed to share with India, because in olden times Master would say that, you know, Indian pilgrims were highly dharmic, and it's only been more in modern times that some adharmic principles have slipped in. And so Swami felt very compelled to write this course, and he wrote the outline while he was there in the hospital bed, and his friend and secretary Keshava, he asked him, he said, take down this outline, and he outlined this course, 26 lessons. Each lesson has principles, application, meditation, and affirmation. And it's beautiful. And I'm really happy to share too. This is with my crystal clarity hat.
Yeah.
But we have Swami reading the audiobook.
Oh,
and I know
wow.
probably many listeners today, a lot of people don't read.
Yeah.
They listen and they're on the road or they have Bluetooth headset, right? The wireless.
You're
In
listening to the New
2024,
Dawn podcast.
people are doing podcasts. You gave me this hot cacao drink, which is I'm really enjoying. Thank you.
You're welcome.
But in 2024, audiobooks outsold ebooks in the United States
wow.
for the first time.
So there's a real shift happening.
It's been a real shift. I'm sharing all that to say this is on Audible. It's
Oh,
on
great.
Spotify. It's out there everywhere.
Great. We could even put a link
Yeah.
with the video somewhere. So
Yeah,
people
we
can
have it
find
on our
easily.
website too. But it's Swami Kriyananda used to say, when you write, you can have crystal clarity, right? And he was an incredible example of crystal clarity.
Mm.
And he gave the name of our publishing arm that
Mm-hmm.
for a reason. He would go over a manuscript 50 times and people would say, God, you write so easily. And he said, no. He said, it reads easily because I put the work into it.
Right.
But he would also say of the spoken word, right, you can convey feeling. I think that's why podcasts, right, are,
Right.
it's a conversation. It's we're having our cacao drink. It's relaxed. You can connect on a heart level, right? You can feel someone's consciousness. So in an audio book, you have sort of the blend of the two, which is beautiful. You have the crystal clarity of the writing and the consciousness of the author. And so that's why I'm really thrilled about Swami reading this. And basically it's been buried for 20 years.
Oh, wow. So it's like a new thing that's coming out.
Yeah, I mean, he wrote this course in around 2005, 6, I forget.
Mm-hmm.
It was around then, so it's basically 20 years ago. And it was only in this course format where people got, these little 3-ring binder. They put it in their 3-ring binder, and that was awesome. And it was a fundraiser for Ananda India at that time. But now we said we've got to get it back out there in a broader way. That was the impetus to publish the book and to publish the audiobook.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
It's you just because you've mentioned India, it just made me think like, this course was conceived, you could say, in India, and behind you there's this picture that was just laying around the studio when we moved in here. But it's of ancient India. I mean, an artistic rendition, but I used to hear I've heard people say that there's this interesting correlation when the British colonized India. There was like just this suspicious transfer of wealth. India used to be the most prosperous place on the planet at one point. And slowly those jewels transferred across seas to Europe and to Britain. But these principles are really rooted in success, in vast success.
Yeah, and true and lasting success. I think that's the key, is that it's what we, in fact, I think it was the first lecture of Swami Kriyananda's that I attended, and I'll never forget, he said, sometimes what you want and what you really want are miles apart. People, most of the time, we're driven by desires, whims, fancy. Oh, this is the fun. I just sort of follow that.
Right.
But what we really want in the material success and the outer things is we want sat, as the Indians call it, sat chit ananda. We want everlasting existence, everlasting consciousness, and ever new bliss, is the way Yogananda described it. And that's what Swami was trying to do with this course, is to remind not only Indians, but remind all of us that we have that eternal center within us, and that nothing outwardly can touch it. And it's not just a beautiful platitude, right? Because if it's just, it's like that's a beautiful image of the spiritual eye there. But if we don't have a way
Right.
to attain it,
Mm-hmm.
then it's just a platitude. It's a thing that we're not living, in other words.
Right.
So, but when we can live it, that's why it's important to be able to manifest.
Mm-hmm.
Not that we've got to manifest millions of dollars, but that we can manifest. What did Yogananda say? Give me, I care not, Father, what I may possess, but give me the power to acquire at will what I may daily need.
Right.
And that's what the Course is. Swami's saying, learn to harness the power of God that is within you, and learn to cooperate with divine grace. Learn to use your willpower, learn to use your intelligence, learn to use your feeling nature, your whole being in concert with the divine.
Yeah.
And when you and that's where the yoga, that's why it's a science.
Yeah.
Yoga is a science. It's a spiritual science. And that's why this course is so unique. This is someone in Swami Kriyananda who lived these principles. And it's not, we can see it. We're here at Ananda Village.
Right.
Springtime with Ananda is starting today.
Tulips are popping off.
For those that don't know, we're up in Northern California, this beautiful setting, the Yuba River looking out over the Sierra foothills. And some like 40 years ago, Swami said to the gardeners here, thousands of people will come one day. This will be a world-class garden. And at that time, it was just like
a dirt hill.
It was a dirt hill, exactly.
But last year we had.
Lo and behold, last year we had 20,000 people came and visited. Wow. And this year it's going to be about the same. So what he had that vision, right? But the vision isn't enough. It's then, give me the intelligence. I have the intelligence within me to see the solution, but then I have the energy and the will to actualize it. Yeah. That's why I love how Yogananda gave that phrase, self-realization. It's you. It's all about you. And we live in a very self-interested age. So that's so he met people where they were. So take your self-interest and spiritualize it. Right. Because it's in your best interest, right? To learn more, to discover more about yourself. Yeah.
There's this word manifesting is thrown around so much these days, and that's why I think we touched on a lot. I think this course is so timely because that word gets thrown around, and it's a lot of times just with the vague language. You get the right crystal, kind of throw the thing into the fire. Like, it's get the crystal ball, go see the psychic, check your charts. And I think this is where a course like this can really be of a great aid to people because it's practical. Like you said, it's a science. You can take it, and it's not just about the material success that does come. It's about the inner component of that also, the inner success that comes. People would say this about, Yogananda especially, and Rajarsi, and really successful yogis, just to be in their presence. If you tune in, you could feel the bliss kind of just radiating off of them. Yeah. And did you meet Swami? I don't.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, when I was serving before at Crystal Clarity, was one of my connections with Swami. Yeah, and it was, in fact, the first time I met Swami was in New York City.
Really?
Yeah, it was. I was working in New York City at the time, and he happened to be he was living around the world. He would travel from Italy to America. This is before Ananda India had started, so he would kind of go back and forth from Europe to America. And he took a boat, the Queen Elizabeth, to one of these big charter boats from Europe for his health into the New York City harbor. And so I had read Autobiography of a Yogi. I had become a Kriyaban, but I only knew a few people from Ananda that were on the East Coast. And Swami Kriyananda didn't know me from Adam. And when I met him, it really was a life-changing event. Because, again, it was like, here's this beautiful light, the Autobiography of a Yogi, reading about these great saints and all of this. But actually having met him, he was like if Yogananda was like the sun, I like to think that Swami Kriyananda was a farmer in the field. And he showed me how to take that light and how to build a garden of self-realization. I'm looking at our friend Uma, who's encouraging me to start a garden.
Yeah, well, you already got the cow and the goats.
We have a
and
cow.
chickens.
I got plenty of manure, but we won't go down that road. And Swami was, the first conversation I had with Swami, he was giving a program. We greeted him off the boat, and he was giving a program at Ananda, Rhode Island that weekend. I believe it was Hope for a Better World. He was always writing, right? So it was a new book, and there was a new thought stream. And the thought at that time was Hope for a Better World, the small community solution, right? And the first conversation was Swami just turned and looked at me and he said, "Will you be coming?" And he just had beamed this blissful smile. And I said, "Yes, sir, of course I'm coming." That was the whole reason I was there, to meet him, right? But I never forgot that. I always felt like that sort of sums up our spiritual life. It's, if you think of God as your mother, your father, like your friend, when a friend you haven't seen in years or talked to, think of like the joy, the spontaneous enthusiasm that you have to reunite with that friend. That was the energy that he shared with me in that moment. And it was just like this, it was a complete invitation. Like there was, like it's totally up to you. There's absolutely no pressure.
No strings, yeah.
Yeah, it's you. It's your choice. And I think, I don't know, it was very simple, but it made a deep impression on my soul that, I'm coming.
Yeah.
Where you're going, I'm going. And I just, I'm very grateful to Swami, his dedication, right, to living a life by these high principles, by adhering to Dharma,
right,
and openly sharing. That was the thing. Like I just, I really was blown away just by how openly he shared. It's just like, this is, it's, you can toe dip, or you can take the plunge. And just through his magnetism in that moment, it invited me, and thankfully I was in a place where I was open to it, and I could take that step.
Yeah. You said you were living in New York at that time. Is it true? Were you working on Wall Street also?
I was working in the financial markets. I worked for a company that people probably have heard of called Bloomberg. The former mayor of New York City, Mike Bloomberg, founded this company. He became a self-made billionaire. He was a Wall Street trader, and then he took that money and started this company. But interestingly, Bloomberg, the company, was founded with a Dharmic principle.
Really?
What Mike Bloomberg, this is an interesting sideline, but the way Mike Bloomberg became successful was he brought transparency to the financial markets. See, like back in the 80s or whenever, if Uma was a broker and you were an investor, like the brokers could rake over, it was like poker, and they could all collude together and be like, hey, he wants to buy a bond. It's really worth 95, but I'm going to sell it to him for 105. And she could make a big spread. Of course, Uma wouldn't do this. No. But you see, and so what Mike Bloomberg did is he said, I'm going to bring transparency to the bond market. And so he created a Bloomberg terminal, which was basically software that says, hey, this is the fair market value based upon where all other investors are valuing this bond. And then they would say, hey, Uma, like, no, my Bloomberg says it's worth 95. Why are you trying to sell it to me for 105? And they'd be like, darn it. Now I've got to get a Bloomberg. So it leveled the market. It leveled the playing field. He brought transparency. He brought a sense of Dharma, right action. And I think that's in large part why Mike Bloomberg and the company became very successful. So that's where I was working when I met Swami.
Did you see a lot of joy in the circles you ran in? Or?
Yes and no. I met people that had a lot of money, like, millions, multi-millions, and had not the same amount of joy. Money doesn't necessarily equate to happiness. And I met people that were successful, and they were dharmic, and they were very happy. But at the same time, I got to a point where, New York is fast-paced.
Yeah.
And I just realized, I was like, my life felt like it was just getting faster and faster, and everything you had to, the markets is about speed, and we're dealing with people in the market. We were basically servicing the players in the market, the portfolio managers, the guys on the floor of the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, the guy eating pizza who's a day trader, the corporate treasury office of publicly traded companies. Everybody had Bloomberg. And so you had to be on top of your game in that way. But I realized, like, man, my life is getting faster and faster, and I need some way to have inner peace.
Was there a specific pivot point? Did something happen, or was it a gradual realization?
Yeah, I mean, I basically got to a point where it was like utter desperation.
Really?
And I just said, I need. It was this thought that came. And there was build up to this, and I could go more into the backstory, but the thought was, you need to learn to meditate. And it was like a little subtle whisper, and I was like, yeah, I need to learn to meditate. And that was divine grace. Yogananda says thoughts are universally rooted, not individually. It was like this thought up there, and through the grace of God, I heard it. And I remember I went with my friend Paul Salerno. If you're out there, Paul, God bless you. And we went with our suits on our lunch break, and we got our mantras from the local transcendental meditation group.
Okay.
Paid like $1,000 for a mantra.
Most
You're like,
expensive
it was like
syllables.
New York, you got to get it done on your lunch break, and it was, they had you. But kidding aside, it was very helpful, and so I had that practice for 6 or 9 months of this mantra practice, and having a discipline of a daily meditation, and it really helped me. It helped me gain a sense of centeredness. And
was it an easy integration for you?
It was fairly easy. I mean, it was 20 minutes twice a day, and I would do it before work and when I got home, kind of thing. And so it felt natural that way, but I felt like it was missing something. And I didn't know until I found the autobiography, until I found Yogananda and the path of self-realization. I felt like what it was missing was a connection with God. It's like in autobiography, the way that Yogananda describes Babaji talks about Kriya Yoga, that it'll encircle the planet through man and uplift mankind through man's personal transcendental experience of God. And I felt like that's what was missing, was that it is about your relationship with God. And if the G word, is a touchy word, whatever, the infinite,
spirit,
universe,
whatever you want to call it,
whatever ineffable word you want to use. But that's what it was for me. And
there's one of the themes that's really recurrent throughout the autobiography of Yogi is this. He talks about this eventual unity between East and West, and that both will come together. And in a sense, I think he says, lead the world. Kind of be an example for the world. What do you think he meant by that, and what are the ways that the East and West would unite?
It's a good question. And it really, not to keep plugging the book, but really that's what this book is about. What he meant was, right, the West, we have material efficiency, and that's what the West is specialized in, and the East has specialized in spiritual efficiency. And that's what Babaji, that you're referring to in the autobiography, you know, who is this great Himalayan deathless guru, which you can
take it or
read
leave
more
it.
about. Yeah, it sounds wild, but the more you read about it and the more you meditate, the more you realize that it makes perfect sense. What and why Babaji and Yogananda is helping to bring this mission into the world today, that the world needs to be balanced, right? So it needs a balance. If it's all about spirit, then the world goes, you know, it doesn't work. And if it's all about material efficiency, then we forget about God.
Right.
What we need is the golden middle path, right? And I think how that manifests is one of the ways that we're dedicated to is spiritual communities, because you have a way to manifest your spiritual life into your daily life. Otherwise, again, it just becomes like it's a nice idea, but when you can bring it into podcasting, when you can bring it into farming, when you can bring it into publishing, whatever it is that you're doing, you know, that you can bring spirit into that. And what you need a way to connect with spirit, though, and that's where Kriya Yoga and these meditation techniques are so powerful, because they give us a scientific way to experience God and then share that consciousness. So I think, like Yogananda said, spiritual communities will spread like wildfire. And with the advent of AI, you know, I'm sure you have heard of AI. I'm assuming you're not a robot.
Well, you never know.
It's going to become more important, right, for people to connect, because when there's sort of this nihilistic thought that is out, well, geez, and that it can be exacerbated now with AI. We can think, well, geez, if the AI can do everything better than I can, then what can I do? What do I do? What value do I have? Well, no, you have. I always remember Sri Yukteswar, Swami Sri Yukteswar was Yogananda's guru, and in the autobiography, he said, you could have the whole. He was talking to Yogananda, and he was saying you could have the whole universe, and the Lord could be elusive still. God is ever new joy, you know, and you have attained God, and He'll beguile you with His joy throughout the years. He was responding to Yogananda's question, but I think of that in the light of AI. Like, you could have all of the intellectual knowledge, right? You could have superhuman intelligence, and you could, you know, like the singularity, and people like talk about these things, and we're going to plug in, and we're going to be more intelligent, and it's great, and technology is a tool, and it will help us, right, if we use it in the right way. But it can't replace consciousness, right? It can't. We still have to. If the computer is in samadhi, it's not going to help you. You have to still have the experience of God within you. And I think that's why Babaji and the great yogis, the enlightened masters, have brought back out the science of Kriya Yoga, because we need an inner technology, right, to balance this incredible, this surge of development that's happening with AI and supercomputing and all of that. It's because we're in an ascending age of energy, right? And so there's more energy flooding the planet, and we can use that in whatever way we want to.
Yeah, you see it manifesting in business and technology, and just, I mean, we were in Argentina like a week ago. 30 hours we can be around the globe across it's like that wasn't possible even just 100 years ago. And it's just how quickly the planet's changing. And especially with technology, it's moving at a pace that humans need something to be able to keep pace with it. Otherwise, it's
Yeah.
and I see this as a teacher, just the effect that it has on kids that are growing up in this environment
Yeah.
now with
Yeah.
the constant stimulation of a phone. I mean,
Yeah.
not just the kid. I mean, me too. You know, the
Yeah.
constant distractions, the constant
Yeah.
ever newness outwardly. But you do that for a week, a few hours a day. It's like, man, you feel burnt out afterwards. You feel kind of just empty.
Yeah. If you spend, that's where, again, the yoga science is helpful, because if your energy is just expent and going out
Mm-hmm.
through the senses, you're drained, no matter. And that's where we have to learn to discriminate,
Mm-hmm.
between, in this rising age, we all have a power within us
Mm.
to know where's our North Star, so to
Yeah.
speak. And that's our own intuition.
Mm.
And intuition is calm feeling, right? It's inspired feeling.
Mm.
But what we have with the overuse of technology, and we're just overstimulated,
Right.
and that then can feed on our emotions, right?
Right.
And when you are emotional, you can't, you lose that compass of your
Right.
North Star.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where meditation, it's helping you tune in to
Mm-hmm.
your own intuitive faculty, right?
Right.
That you have within you. Yogananda would like thunder these things. You must stand unshaken amidst the crash of breaking worlds, right? So I won't hit the table.
Yeah.
I won't let the cow go. But, he was serious. He was saying, you have that power within
Right.
you. It's your own, but it's God-given.
Right.
So tap into the power, open yourself to it, because if we don't, we're just, it would just be this insatiable
Mm-hmm.
appetite for more technology, more super intelligence, more, and we need to counterbalance that with our own intelligence. Nayaswami Jaya gave a beautiful talk recently. It was at a Sunday satsang at Ananda, and he asked that question. It was simply, what is consciousness?
Mm.
And he was saying, like, with AI, it's like, well, hey, we can produce consciousness.
Uh-huh.
We can manufacture consciousness. And he was saying, well, I think that's wrong. That's mistaken. That's a remnant of Kali Yuga, which is the age of materialism, that where we thought we're just the body and the outer world. No, it's consciousness manifests in this world, right? God is a pure spirit. That first movement is like that subtle thought. It's like fluttering leaves in a tree, and it condenses into energy, and energy into matter. Matter can't produce consciousness. Everything is consciousness ultimately. So the computers and AI can be used for good, but everything in this world is dual, right? Some will be. I saw an AI expert was saying they realized that if they give the models poor programming skills, they become evil, he said. And they said, meaning they become misaligned. This is a word in AI, like if you're not, meaning aligned with human values, right? And so it's like garbage in, garbage out. Everything you're seeing, of course, that's happening with technology is a reflection of our own consciousness. So all this to say, I believe it's going to be what Swami Kriyananda said, actually in that first book when I met him, Hope for a Better World. He said, it'll be a return to simplicity. So like this advent and this race, more, and we live in an age of self-interest, and who's going to get the super AI first and make the most money. All of that is it's just going to bring people back to plain living and high thinking,
right,
lead to the greatest happiness. Right, that's what Yogananda said about spiritual community. So that's what I think is going to happen. I mean, and I can see it happening in our own community here, but that people are just they're dying for connection now more and more.
Well, and with AI and technology and just this endless stream, it used to be 50 years ago or so, the news was on for like an hour a day, and you'd watch it, and then now it's a 24-hour from like 85,000 sources. It's not even just one or two news sources anymore. It's constant, and that endless cycle for many people, they get stuck in these, doomsday loops.
Yeah.
No matter what side of the aisle they're on, it's like whatever they're getting fed, it just creates a sense of anxiety and restlessness, and just the effects that has on your consciousness. And so you've mentioned it a few times. So what is Kriya Yoga, and how does that affect as a spiritual practice? Is it something new? Is it old? And kind of how does it work?
India was called, back in ancient times, it wasn't India. It was known as Bharata. And Bharata is the land of light. And so the religion, so to speak, in India was known as Sanatan Dharma. We talked about Dharma, right? Material success by adhering to Dharma. Sanatan Dharma meaning the eternal religion or the eternal way. If you think of it like that, the eternal way of awakening. And Kriya Yoga is one of the ancient tools of Bharata, of the land of light, right? Of returning to the light. It's how do you realize the grand declarations of Scripture? Thou art that. I and my Father are one, as Christ said. Whatever saint, whatever master, whatever Scripture says that inspires, how do you actually realize that? Again, self-realization. So Kriya Yoga is the tool for upliftment of your consciousness. And we can't get into, a deep explanation of it, because one needs to learn it from a Kriya Ban.
Right.
And we do, of course, we offer books and courses on it. But it's best, I would encourage people, if they're interested in Kriya Yoga, you can call Crystal Clarity. I'll answer the phone. I can help you. 800-424-1055.
Kriya.
No, that is our 800 number. But we, at Ananda, we work, one of the principles that Swami gave us that we strive to uphold is people are more important than things. The very first sentence in Autobiography of a Yogi, the characteristic features of Indian culture have long been the search for ultimate verities and the concomitant disciple-guru relationship. So in other words, the land of light, Bharata, there's the grand light, but then how do you ascend to the light? Well, we're people,
right.
So we relate to other people. So the disciple-guru relationship is a sacred bond of divine friendship. And that's what we try to uphold through Ananda Sangha, is having a network of divine friendship. And just saying, like what you're doing, and it's beautiful through this podcast, just sharing openly in a divinely friendly way to say, hey, will you be coming? It's an invitation.
Right.
So Kriya, it works through, just like the principle we were talking about of success, of concentrated energy. It's the same principle. It's learning to awaken your energy, to concentrate your energy so that you can magnetize the divine and have a personal experience of communion with God within you. And you don't have to, no one's got to tell you,
right.
Even though we have the books, even though you have the pen and the paper, it's the book of your own nature. So Kriya is an eternal, it's part of Sanatan Dharma. It's not the only technique. It's one that Babaji gave, I think, during this time, because, again, we have entered this age of energy. So how can we work with ourselves as beings of energy, right? The scriptures say you have three bodies. You have a causal body, a body of ideas, astral body, a body of energy, and a physical body. And so how do we... But the bridge between the material success and spiritual success, the bridge is energy.
Right.
And it's learning, but again, that's why I was touching on, in this age, we have to learn to differentiate between raw emotion and calm feeling. And so Kriya helps you tune in to that calm, intuitive feeling in your own self, and you just rest in God, live in God.
That's a beautiful explanation, and I just tying it to this book again, because I think it's so, what we shared, sometimes spirituality can seem like a very far out concept. Like samadhi is great. Yeah, it sounds like it'll be infinite bliss. That sounds great. It's a wonderful idea, but it's over there. It's in the distance.
Yeah.
So having ways that you can act in the world that further that, and I think that's one of the big shifts that's happening now, is people are realizing that you can use your material success to further your spiritual growth. It's not like they're counter to each other. One of the chapters in here that I wanted to ask you about was right use of ego, and you said there's so much self-interest in the world today. So maybe first off, what is ego, and then what is right use of ego? What constitutes right use of ego?
Have you heard that? I know you probably have heard this joke, because Davey has told it, but there's this farmer in Maine somewhere, and this guy is lost, and pulls over and says, how do I get to, Pocahontas, this town over there? And he said, well, go down there to the yellow barn, take a right. No, that's not right. Now go down and you take a left, and you hit the bridge. No, that's not right either. I said, you know what? You can't get there from here. Anyway, the point
before Google Maps.
Yeah, it was pre-Google Maps. But what did people do before Google Maps? That's how we feel, right? How do we get there from here?
Right.
I think that's what you're asking, right? How do you get to this? How do you get to the light? How do you get to samadhi? We're drinking this beautiful warm cacao drink, which, by the way, has milk from
natural raw goat milk.
How do you move from your ego to soul realization? It's like a tall task.
What is ego, first off? Because it's a definition again that gets thrown around a lot.
Swami Kriyananda defined it in I thought a very helpful way. He said your ego is like a bundle of self-definitions. You have all this thought: I am Janaka, I'm young, I'm married, I'm a man, I'm American. And so we layer on all these self-definitions, and maybe one or two isn't limiting, but it's like the tale of Gulliver, that he was the little strings, and they became more and more and more and more, but then it binds you, right? And our soul remembers being free, being infinite, being eternal. And so rather, the ego is, if you think of it as a direction of energy that's keeping you separate, it's keeping you small. Whereas with techniques like Kriya, how do we learn how to use the ego? What's the right use of ego?
Right. And
I think Narayan, it's a spiritual name I was given by Swami Kriyananda. Another story that we don't have to get into. Or this could be the longest podcast ever. There was that senator that just gave a speech. It was like a 25-hour filibuster speech.
No.
So we can make this the 25-hour
filibuster
podcast.
episode.
That's the filibuster podcast.
Charge the phone.
You don't want to miss it. Even though you'll pass out. Geez, what was I talking about?
Narayan.
Right, thank you.
Self-definition.
Om Namo Narayan. That's the right use of ego. Meaning, I offer, Lord, I am thine. Swami Kriyananda has a chant, Lord, I am thine, be thou mine. There's a beautiful photo, I think, it's like encapsulates the right use of ego. It's a photo of Swami Kriyananda. It was at the teaching temple here. You probably have seen the photo, that side profile photo, the one I'm talking about. And he has this blissful smile on his face, his eyes are closed. Nayaswami Devarshi took that photo. I don't know if you know the story behind it. Devarshi's wife had just recently passed, Maria, and so he was grieving the loss of the physical loss of his wife. She's with us. And he happened to have his phone. I don't know when, it was like 2010. Yeah, it was around 2010. Anyway, and so it was a Sunday satsang. Devi was reading from Rays of the One Light, this parallel passage just between the Bible and the Gita. So she was reading like Krishna from the Gita, and Swami was listening with that bliss, just communing with Krishna, the words, the vibration, and Devarshi snapped that photo. And so that photo, I feel like it's a perfect example of the right use of ego, right? We want to, with love, with reverence, and with joy, offer ourselves into the light. So let's, bring that back. You have to want something, right? And it's learning, hey, okay, well, I wanted the money, I wanted the car, I wanted the girlfriend, I wanted the job, whatever you want. If you can realize, rather than don't have those, it's to realize that what you really want behind all those things is peace, is love, is joy, is really culminating in bliss. And if I actually go after, like Yogananda said, if you want that joy, why not go after it directly? Or as Christ said, seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all these things will be added unto you. So if you use your ego to say, well, Lord, I have these desires, don't deny them, but I'm offering them into your one light, and they're like offerings into that flame, because he knows everything anyway. When I was growing up, I grew up in an Italian family, and my mother she just knew what we were doing when my brother and I were getting into mischief. And I vividly remember being in the kitchen, and she had she was a baker, so she had the flour jar and the sugar jar. And I had my bowl of cereal one morning. I was like, I'm going to get some extra sugar. My mom was in the other room. She's like, and I swear I opened, she's like, Philip, but you're in the sugar jar. I was like, oh my God, how did she know? Rather, God knows. So just to be yourself, and that's why I loved Swami. He was himself. He was himself. He was true to his soul self, and he exemplified, this is how you use your ego in generosity of spirit, in sharing with others, in service to others. Expand, it's an expansive way to live versus thinking all, just about your little self. That's contractive, and it won't satisfy our deeper soul hunger.
I think you touched on something that also is contractive, and I think really a very common thought. I mean, they say in a spiritual path, you need to overcome all of your desires. So a lot of people think, well, no, I don't want that anymore, and then just try and stuff it down or suppress it. Yeah. And you see they just get tighter and tighter, and they get stiff, and then they, eventually they burn out or they snap or something because it's...
There's an important difference between suppression and transmutation.
Right.
You have to, like Swami would say, you have to accept things as they are before you can change them to what you would like them to be. And in fact, I think somewhere in the essence of the Bhagavad Gita, which is a book that Swami Kriyananda wrote based on Yogananda's Gita commentaries, somewhere in there, Swami makes this like a slight comment, not slight, meaning just a side note commentary, that all pain and suffering comes from, in some level, of not accepting things as they are. Yeah. So if we can really genuinely accept ourselves that, hey, here I am, Lord. Damn, I didn't ask. You created me, but you must release me. You must free me. And like Yogananda would say it, God doesn't mind your faults. He only cares about your indifference, right? But that's what we need to really be on guard against, is getting apathetic and indifferent and just not like, and that's a common attitude, right?
Right.
No, like we care deeply. We want to rechannel all. Think of the businessman in New York. If he can rechannel that concentrated energy, that business plan, that mentality, he'll have great success. That's why many of Yogananda's most advanced disciples were businessmen.
Right.
Not only Rajarsi Janakananda, Oliver Black.
Right, another millionaire.
And others. And Swami in his own right was incredibly successful. So, yeah, it's learning. Transmutation is through self-offering and through saying, hey, like all my clay, I'm offering it up to you to be changed into spiritual gold. And how do we do that?
Right.
That's where Kriya Yoga and these techniques are incredibly powerful, because it's like what you were saying, the old religion is like, don't do this, don't do that. Like, you've heard that story of, who was it, the Hollywood actor, gosh, I forget his name.
Herb Jeffries,
thank you. Yeah, Herb Jeffries. And he said to Yogananda, he was a disciple of Yogananda and an actor in Hollywood. And he said, I hear not to do this, thou shalt not do that, thou shalt not do this. What can I do? And Yogananda said, well, Herb, do you smoke? And, yes. Well, you may continue. Do you drink? Yes. You may continue. Do you go around town with women? Yes. You may continue. And he said, but if you follow these teachings sincerely, I promise you that those things will drop away of their own.
Right.
I don't know if there's an old movie, which you probably haven't seen. I'm not promoting this movie. It's called Pumping Iron. It's actually an old documentary with Arnold Schwarzenegger when he was a weightlifter.
I think I have seen that, actually.
Yeah, and Lou Ferrigno was challenging him.
Yeah,
right?
like rivals.
And there's like this fun scene with Lou Ferrigno's father. They're like in the Bronx or somewhere in New York, and they're working out, and Arnold Schwarzenegger is working out in California on the beaches with the girls. And Lou Ferrigno's father says, Louis, they've never seen arms like yours. And Lou Ferrigno's like, more weight. So I'm bringing up that silly scene to say, like, that's kind of the attitude we need to have the spiritual path, like more weight, more, in other words, more, just give me more of devotion. Just dive into it.
Yeah.
There's like, don't hold back. And we can't expect the changes are going to happen overnight. We need patience. We need endurance. We need steadfastness. But it's like the more we're looking at the spiritual eye, right, which is this point between the eyebrows, we're kind of looking up. But really what's happening is he's stealing as like Christ. Yeah. He's like a thief in the night. And he's stealing into your consciousness. So then maybe some years go by and you realize, wow, you're not reacting the way you used to. Someone cuts you off. I used to drive the Jersey Turnpike, and before I meditated, I remember this person cut me off, and I laid on the horn like it was like I was sitting back for like the Lord of the Rings. Like I remember, I think I held on to it for probably like a second for each chakra. Like it was like a 7-second. I was so angry. This person cut me off. Friday, end of the week, rush hour. I was just like up in arms about it, and just like I look back, then 20 years later, after meditating and practicing Kriya, Dharmadevi and I were in LA, and I was driving down Santa Monica Boulevard, and I was looking for a parking spot or something. I was driving slower, which Dharmadevi says is abnormal. But no, I was driving, and this guy behind me, I could tell, was really agitated that I was driving so slow. And then he pulled up next to me and he said, "Hey, buddy, the speed limit's 30 miles an hour, not 3." But, what I found in that moment, like, I found it so funny. I just thought it was so amusing. It was like Divine Mother was like yelling at me through this man, and it was like, yeah, I was driving too slow. I was like,
Right.
Thanks. Like,
Yeah.
it wasn't a big deal.
But in the past, you would have just
Like, so
gone off.
yeah, and that's the change. It's inner transformation that happens.
And I think that's just going back to that idea of suppression. When you suppress it, that's when you think you're so peaceful, but then something like that happens, and it's just like you unload on people.
Yeah.
Because that energy is still there.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned, we're living in the age of energy, so it's the beautiful thing about the teachings of yoga and the science is that you're working with the energy. You're not just cutting it off. You're rechanneling it.
Yeah. Yeah, I believe it's in another book called by Swami Kriyananda, The Essence of Self-Realization, which is a great book, highly recommended. These are sayings of Yogananda that he recorded, and they're on different topics. And there's somewhere in there, I don't remember exactly what chapter, that someone's asking Yogananda about saints, and saints in India versus saints in the Christian saints. And he said, well, many Christian saints actually don't, they gain something through their chastity and through their moral living, but they don't have realization because they don't have technique. Which is very interesting, meaning they don't have something like Kriya Yoga, which is, like you're saying, a technique to work with our energy, to withdraw the energy into the spine, bring it up to the brain.
Right.
Like in and up. That's the spiritual path. Our friend, Swami Ananda, who's got a great sense of humor, someone asked him, geez, the spiritual path is so long. He said, no, it's not. The spiritual path is like 3 feet from the base of your spine to the point between the eyebrows. That's all it is.
It's a rechannel.
Yeah. But that's why it's important to learn to concentrate, right? And to do what you're doing. When I was a kid, this is another Italian memory. My grandfather, God rest his soul, he was a great soul. And he was like self-made man, like urban legends like surrounded my grandfather. Like, your grandfather couldn't read or write. He was a plumber. And they're like, he walked into that building and they asked him how much pipe they needed. And he told them within a foot just by looking at the building. I never, like, there's these legends.
A yogi, huh?
He was like tough as nails kind of guy, right? So we were always doing some project, growing up, and like we were doing demo. I was like 10 years old, and I was not good with my hands. My brother was much more adept. And so my job was to take these nails out of a wall, and I would just take a nail out, and I put it, and I had the hammer, and I would put the nails in the sand. And I got to this one nail, and I just couldn't get it out of the wall. And I was like, hey, Grandpa, I can't get this nail out of the wall. And he was like squatting down, and he turned and he said, oh yeah? And I knew I was in trouble. Just by the tone of his voice, like he knew that you were in trouble. And he came over with his hammer, and he's like, that's because you're not using both your hands. And he ripped that nail, and I swear to God, I saw this nail like flying in the air, and like it hit the ground. And I was just awestruck. I was like speechless. But I never forgot that lesson. Use both your hands. So often we're bifurcated, right? We're not fully committed. So I'm saying, and you don't have to like renounce the world and go up to the mountains and be a monk. It's about inside, right? It's about being free inside. And that's where the techniques can help you have an experience inside, in yourself, and go for it.
Yeah.
And to do that, that's where friendship comes in, and talk to someone like yourself. Right.
And that's where it's so important, because there's tons of people out there that are very ambitious, that want to be successful in the world. And like, you just think of what of a different world it would be if the most successful people were also, yogi. We're
Yeah.
also united with the higher consciousness.
Well, in higher ages, it's interesting you say that the government, so to speak, was enlightened monarchy. It's like, think of like Krishna.
Right.
It's like, Krishna's the king, and he
Right.
was like, and you have an avatar as a king. That's like, as they say,
good living.
Haribol in India. It's like because he is tuned in to God consciousness, and he is leading the nation, the people dharmically. And we don't, it's said in India, Dharma is like a table with 4 legs. And in the lower age of Kali Yuga, Dharma only has 1 leg. It's completely unstable. In Dwapara Yuga, the age that we've just entered, it's becoming established on 2 legs. In Treta Yuga, the age of thought, 3 legs. In Satya Yuga, the age of truth, it's resting on 4 legs. So that's why you look to the world, people are like, oh God, the world's it's horrible. The leader, no, it's just we're going through transformation. And we can detach a little bit and say, there's just this incredible transformation.
Yeah.
And we're here. Why are we here? Why are you here? Why are we here? We're here for the upliftment of consciousness. We're here for for this transformation of consciousness.
Yeah.
And that's why when Swami would receive an inspiration, what would he do? He would start to write because he wanted to share that inspiration. There's the sun, but we need farmers in the field.
Right.
Like Swami said, there's enough gurus. We need disciples. We need people that are willing to carry it out as a discipline, not in a heavy sense, in a joyful sense.
Right. Well, it's kind of like that quote of scripture: "The harvest is plenty, but the workers are few."
Yeah.
And I just keep thinking that idea of like it's through these things that you grow. It's through these. It's like that step-by-step development. You mentioned magnetism earlier, and it made me think of a story with Oliver Black, one of Yogananda's spiritual sons, who was very successful, and he wanted to start communities at one point. And he was based in the Midwest, so he really wanted some architecture of Frank Lloyd Wright, who was a famous architecture back then. He was like, but I don't know him. How am I ever gonna get it? So he has this desire to fulfill this goal of his. And like 3 days later, he's at a restaurant and he looks up and like the table next to him is sitting Frank Lloyd Wright. It's just that was the magnetism that he developed. And it's like when you have those experiences, that's when I think that the universe is conscious. The universe does listen to you, and you can interact with it. Yeah. I mean, we've been talking about the autobiography of a yogi. I don't know how many people know, like Steve Jobs, that was like his #1 book. He gifted it to everybody at his funeral. He read it every year of his life since he was like 18. And it was just, that was like one of the key factors that made him. And you think about how much Apple has influenced the world nowadays. It's through the application of spiritual principles that he was transformed, and it changed the world around us.
Yeah. In fact, we got the call.
Did you?
From Steve Jobs' estate family.
Really?
He was having the memorial, for the autobiography of a yogi. Yeah. Yeah, fascinating. That was the gift that he gave to 500 people or so at that. And and the iPhone has been, in the last 20 years, probably the most transformational piece of technology. Yeah.
The things that are possible, and just the how much that's facilitating an evolution of consciousness, and how much that's just merely even just by connecting people. The fact that you don't need to be a millionaire to have this incredible piece of technology, but you're learning about people across the world, across the globe, that you can connect, and I think it's amazing. I think there's a bright future. There is hope for a better world.
Yeah, and it's gospel good news.
Yeah.
Like Yogananda gave one of his, you can hear he's got 10 audio talks that are shared by Self-Realization Fellowship. And One, he's talking from his upstairs
Ah.
bedroom, I think in Mount Washington,
Mhm.
saying, this is, as I explained, this is Paramhansa Yogananda speaking to you through a wire.
Ah.
And he was saying like that these evolutions, these inventions of consciousness through technology are illustrating that God is everywhere. One of the delusions that breaks down in Dwapara Yuga is the delusion of space. Like you were talking, you guys just went to Argentina. You can go around the world. You know, you can fly up into outer space now. Of course, you know, we've got people that want to go to. We want to go to other planets.
Yeah.
Like that's actually in people's consciousness that we can break this barrier of space. But really, what that's reflective of is we want to break down the barrier of the space that the ego creates between us and spirit. So we need the spiritual rocket of love to learn how to do that.
Yeah, is the inner and the outer together.
Yeah.
I wanted to wrap up now, but I want to ask you how, because crystal clarity is just a wellspring of all these wonderful books that we've mentioned. We've probably mentioned like 8 books through this talk alone, and they're all fantastic. How can people connect with crystal clarity and find out more?
Yeah, it's real simple, crystalclarity.com. You can go on our website, you can find everything there. We're on Facebook, we're on all social media and all that. If you're old school, give us a call. 800-424-1055. We'll put the link in the podcast video, and we actually talk to people.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It's not so common these days. Yeah. Well, thank you for being here, man. I really appreciate the work you're doing.
Yeah, thank you, Jonica, for having me. I really appreciate being here. This is my first podcast, and
hopefully not your last. We'll have you back.
Thank you, cow milk. Really, that's drawing me back.
All right, thank you, brother.
Thank
appreciate
you.
that. Thank you. All right.